Hey painters, welcome to the Candy Clouds workshop with Paint Lounge. My name is Kayla and I'll be your art instructor. I am the artist that painted this and I'm just going to go through what tools we have in our box. So you should each have a size 8 Paint Lounge flat brush. It's really soft, yours is a lot cleaner than mine, but it's a great brush that we're going to use for our background. Both of you will also have a 5-piece brush set that ranges in sizes number 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And they're soft to touch. They are the flat brushes. You'll also have a pack of the bristled hog-haired brushes, which is very similar to the same pack that we just looked at, but these ones have coarse hair, so you can really tell the difference with the brush hairs. Each of you will have a palette knife. We don't use this for application, it's actually used to scoop the paint out of our containers onto our palette. You will also have a piece of chalk, which we're going to use to sketch out our branch and our birds a little later on. Each of you will have a paint palette. I'm actually using cardboard as I'm painting because I don't clean my palettes, but I'm just going to go through the colors with you. We have white, we have cool yellow, we also have this gorgeous neon pink, and the cool blue, as well as some black. I just didn't put the black on my palette because I don't need it at this moment. So I have the white, the cool yellow, the neon pink, and the cool blue. So you would have 1-ounce containers. I have larger containers just because I do a lot of the virtual workshops, but you can use that palette knife to scoop out your paint onto your palette. Additional tools that are handy to have, each of you should have a cup of water. I will show you how to wash your brush a little later on, but a cup of water is handy to clean our brushes. You should also have some paper towel or an old rag just to clean your brushes even more, dry them off. And an alternative tool, but it's very handy, is a blow dryer. So a hair dryer just to dry our canvas, and I'll get into that later on. So just a quick note, the paint is a water-based acrylic. Just be careful of it getting on your clothes. If you do see anything, just head to the nearest sink and lift it up with warm water and paper towel, and it will come out. So just remember that we are inspired by my piece today. No two paintings are going to look exactly the same. Even my example that I paint with you is going to be different than the original, and that's okay. Everyone is their own unique artist today. Our first step will be using the Paint Lounge Flat 8 brush, and we're going to be going into the background, working from our light colors to our dark colors. So we're going to be starting with white and the cool yellow, and I am mixing it on my palette here. However, I actually like to mix everything on the canvas. The reason being is it would give us different tones of the color, and we're not going for one flat color in the background. We want to see different variants of the yellow, the peach, the orange, the pink, and then the purple and the blue as we go on. So I am taking the brush and I'm applying it from side to side using the widest part of the brush. And this is a pair-up workshop, so this is where you're going to work as a team and have these colors connect on either side of the canvas. I would like to give you a quick tip is to paint the edges of the frame. So it looks really nice to take whatever you're doing on the flat surface and wrap it around the frame edge, especially where your canvases connect in the middle. The reason being is when you hang this on the wall, you can sometimes see at certain angles the side of the canvas, and because this is a connecting piece, it's good to have that color just continue and let your imagination roll. So the application is just side to side. You can do nice long smooth strokes, so taking the brush right across the canvas, or you can do shorter strokes with variations of color. So adding a little bit more white in certain areas, adding a little bit of yellow in certain areas. And as we go up the canvas, we're just going to gradually add in color. While we are painting this, I would like to mention at some of the point of the video, I do speed up the time just so it's not a very long recording. However, I take about an hour on the background with the sky and about 30 minutes on the clouds and then 30 minutes on the silhouette. Go at your own pace, take breaks when you need to. To make this easier for you with color, we can break down the canvas into 3 sections. So we have like our yellowy peachy tone, and then the pink, and then the purpley blue tone. So our next application will be applying the pink. Now you'll notice here I'm not dipping the whole entire brush into the pink. I'm just dipping it on the corner. And then what I can do is move back and forth in the section of adding the pink and just gradually add the color in. This is a great blending technique if you are looking to blend 2 colors together. So the pink is at the top and the yellow is still on my brush towards the yellow on the canvas. And then I'm just going to gradually add in the pink. This is so that you have control of how light or dark it becomes. Now remember, you can always add white to lighten our colors, especially with this nice pastel sky. So I did add white all the way throughout the canvas. Essentially, you're just adding more pink as you go. So I'm just building up more pink and maybe even a little bit of that yellow so that I can create a brighter orange. It's a really fun color to create. Now I did add a little bit more pink down towards the bottom because I wanted to make my yellow a bit more peach. So to do that, just adding a little bit more pink in the yellow and then also adding some white. So just easing my way into it. I'm not going full throttle where I'm putting a whole bunch of pink on there. I'm just gradually adding it in again so I can control the color it becomes. I'd like to point out, for the most part, I am using the wide part of the brush, so where it's the biggest. However, I am kind of changing it up and using the thin edge, so not putting a ton of pressure. With the wide part, that's where you're putting the most amount of paint on your canvas. With the thin part, that's where you can kind of add in another color in the sense of white to break up some of your color. This creates almost like the softness in the clouds in the background, so it just breaks up our nice sky. So it's not just one flat color. We have different variations of the pinks and the peaches and the yellows and the whites and so on. Now I do add more pink than most of the colors just because it acts as a kind of buffer in between our 2 colors. It's great to make a beautiful orange, and it's also great to make a very beautiful purple. We do have to be careful of certain colors mixing on this palette. We want to avoid mixing yellow and purple, and we want to avoid mixing orange and blue. If we mix those colors together, we get a funky shade of greenish brown. So the pink is really our best friend, as well as the white, just to act as a barrier and also a beautiful transition of our color. Before we move into the blue and the purple tones, I'm going to show you how to clean your brush. So we're just going to twirl it in our cup or our jar. We don't want to jam it at the bottom. I find a lot of people do tend to do that, and it can actually damage your bristles. And then you're just going to pull the brush off the rim of your cup or jar. I'm sorry, my hand's kind of in the way. But you want to do this a couple of times, and this will help kind of release the paint between the bristles. So just don't do that jamming, and it will keep your brushes long lasting. They'll last you for a lifetime. We want a clean brush so that when we go into the purple tones, we don't have any orange or yellow on our brush. So just give it a rinse in your water bucket and then use paper towel to dry it off. Now we'll be going into more pink. So try and get the pink on your palette that has no yellow in it. We're just gonna go in and add more pink into our section. This time we can just make it a bit brighter and just go a little bit heavier so it's nice and saturated when we add in the blue. So blue and pink make purple. Now if you look at our palette, the blue does look quite dark compared to the pink. So when we're applying the blue, we just want to take a little bit at a time. I have dipped the corner of my brush just like I did with the pink and the yellow. So just taking a little bit of the blue. Look at how dark that is already. It's already changing the pink quite drastically. So just having your brush nice and saturated with the pink will help give us more of a vibrant purple. And then of course you can always add white to lighten. Do remember we are going darker as we go up, so we can make this a lot more of a bolder color. So pink, a little bit of white, some blue, and then as we're going up, we're just adding more blue to our brush. As you can see, I'm speeding through this. This did take me a fair bit of time. Just remember to paint your edges. I think, again, it looks really nice, especially in the middle. It was a bit hard for me to do that just because my canvases are so tight on my easel, but it is really nice. So I'm just gradually adding in that blue, and I'm still adding the white because, again, the blue is so dark. Before we move into the next step, I would recommend just taking a step back and looking to see if you want to change anything. What you can do is just break up some of the color with another color. I did that here and didn't realize I had blue on my brush, so I've just used a little bit of water to lift it up and then paint over some white with some more pink or yellow. So because we've used this size 8 brush pretty well, and it probably has lots of different colors, even if we had washed it, I would even recommend using the size 10 flat brush from our 5-piece set. So that, again, the one that's really soft hairs, and that's a nice size brush that we can just kind of go in and add a few streaks here and there of other colors. So I am doing that with the pink just to kind of deepen my peachy yellow tones. And then you can also do it with the white, and the white will help break up some of our colors. And it will also make it look like you have some wispy clouds in the background before we actually go in and add our clouds. So I did switch over to the size 10 brush just because it was a little bit easier. I had no paint on it and I could just go in and break up my colors again. The next step is leaving your canvas to dry. You can leave your canvas to dry for about 20 to 30 minutes. It doesn't take long because it is acrylic. It's dry fasting. Or you can use a blow dryer. If you've never used a blow dryer before, warm air is best. Cool is okay, and hot is not the best. So just take your time. You can pretty much see when it dries, and you can quickly tap it with your fingertips just to make sure. The next step, we're going to be going into the clouds, and we're going to use those hog hair brushes, the ones that are a bit more coarse to the touch. And we're going to be painting them on with some white paint. Now, to start off, what you can do is use a piece of chalk to actually sketch out where you'd like to place your clouds. So this is helpful, especially with our canvases connecting. You can kind of just gauge where you'd like to place your clouds. My chalk is so light, I apologize that you may not be able to see it, but you'll be able to see it on your canvas. So it's just a guideline. I would recommend to kind of stretch out your clouds. They're not really round and fluffy. They look fluffy, but we're going to do that with our paintbrush. The clouds are created with a dry brush technique using the bristled brushes, so those hog hair brushes. And the idea of this is just to be really kind of rough and not really have too much paint on the brush. And we're just kind of like stamping and swirling around. I would suggest starting inside your chalk line and then just gradually going up and out. Remember, we're not going for really round clouds. They kind of stretch out into our sky. So we're starting with just the white and doing what's called a stippling. We're just kind of dabbing the brush onto the canvas and reapplying when we need to. Less is more. We can always add more paint, but it's a little harder to take it away. Once you have a rough outline of your shape, again, this is kind of just a rough idea. You notice that I didn't put anything at the bottom of my cloud because what I'm going to do is create my cloud color. So I'm mixing my pink and my yellow together to create a nice bright orange, and this is going to be the color that's kind of shadowing my cloud. I'm going to do a similar technique with another sized brush. So I did grab the size 8, I believe, and I'm just kind of stippling in between our two colors, the white and the pink. It looks like orange as well. And I'm just stamping just kind of in between as well as below, so where the shadow would reflect. And then using the other brush, the bristled brush with the white, I can stipple and stamp kind of on top of it and just lightly graze and make it blend together in a dry brush technique. Essentially, it's just going back and forth with the white and the shadow tone color. So applying the white first to create that edge, and then filling in with a bit of shadow underneath, and then adding a little bit of white to combine the two colors. However, we have another way of doing this technique, and what you can do is start with the shadow first. So creating the shape of your cloud with the shadow, and then apply the white on top. So either way, I kind of go back and forth with both techniques. I find it can be a little bit easier to start with the shadow first and then apply the white. Just be really light when you're applying the white. You just don't want to add too much. With this technique, we really just want the white at the top of our cloud and the color or the shadow tone in it and below it. So we want that fluffiness right up at the top. You really see that structure of it, and then it's more wispy and a little bit of color underneath. We can also take the white and drag it slightly back to the outer sides, and it will blend back into our background. So having that textured, colored in the background, having multiple streaks of white and other colors really helps us in this stage so that we can blend it back into the background. Another thing you can do is add a few just white clouds on their own and just kind of little wispy clouds blending back, so they don't really have the shadow underneath, but it just helps break up the canvas as well. So we have sped up the footage here. It did take me about 15 minutes roughly to paint the clouds. Do take your time though. I would say the max about 30 minutes. However, everyone is welcome to go at their own pace. Typically, I'm a pretty slow painter at Paint Lounge, but when you're in the zone, you can kind of either go really fast or really slow. Just take your time mapping out the clouds and filling them with lots of beautiful colors. As you can see, as we move up the canvas, we are adding new colors to our clouds. So we've added the purple tones as well as the blue tones. So mixing that pink and the blue together to create that nice bright purple. And there's not as intense of a white for the clouds up here. They're mainly working with the darker colors because it's a darker part of the sky. But it just gives us a really nice softness of color. Once again, you can leave it to dry for about 20 minutes or you can blow dry the canvas for the next step. We are at our final steps, and first we're going to use the chalk to sketch out our branch, and then we'll sketch out our birds. So this is where we can really connect our two canvases together. You will see that I'm using white chalk. I do end up changing it to the red chalk just so that you can see what I draw, because it can be a little difficult on the screen. However, you'll be able to see it on your canvases. So I did do it about a third off the bottom. It's not halfway, it's a little bit below the halfway, just so that we can really see those beautiful candy clouds. One thing you'll notice is I didn't actually sketch out the width of the branch. So I just drew lines for my branches and the smaller branches going off of the branch, because the paintbrush is going to actually do all the work for us when we apply the paints. So this is just a rough outline of where we want to place our branches. You don't even have to sketch all of this tiny branches, and you might want to just paint those as we go. If you make any mistakes with your sketch, remember it is just a rough sketch. You can gently rub it with your fingertips. Just remember that tomorrow, once the canvas is totally dry, any chalk lines you can actually wash off with a damp cloth or a sponge or a Q-tip if you're nervous, but it does come off canvases quite easily. It's a lot easier to use than pencil. Here you can see that I am going back in with my red chalk just so you can kind of see my sketch a bit more. I mean, it wasn't the best color either just because I'm going on top of a pink surface, but it's just an idea of your branch, and feel free to change it up. Remember, all trees are different shapes and it's more natural to have curvy, quirky lines. It's not natural to really see straight lines in nature, so just have fun creating your own branch. Next, we're going to draw our birds, and whenever we're doing animals or any type of buildings, we look at what shapes we can see inside of them to break it down. So a circle for the head, and then we can do a triangle for the shoulders, the body, and the tail. So it's one large triangle just to make it really nice and simple. We can round out the shoulders a little bit when we're painting. For the beak, we can do a small triangle, or we can just do a line as it's just a sketch. So again, on the other side, a circle. I made a little bit of a mistake there. It's like an oval, but a circle, and then the triangle, and then we can just do a line for the beak. Next, we're going to actually paint it. So I would recommend using the soft nylon flat brushes. A size 6 or a size 8 is comfortable. We're going to start off with the branches and then we'll paint the birds. And we're going to be using the black paint. So it's our darkest pigment. We can grab that palette knife and just scoop it onto our palette. And this is our darkest pigment, so we do want to be careful and start small. So I did use the size 6 brush, just saturating it with paint. And then what I'm going to be doing is using the edge of the brush, just like we did for the streaks in the sky, just being really thin with my application. So it's best to start small and then gradually make it grow. So you can always add more. And you'll find when you go back in, it does kind of widen a little bit as you go. So just starting small, and then we can make it bigger if we need to, using the edge of the brush rather than the wide part of the brush so that we get thinner lines and then we can control it. There's two ways to paint a branch. You can start with the widest part first, applying a lot of pressure on the brush, and then lighten the pressure as you go out to the end of the branch, and just almost like lifting it up. So light as a feather, just pulling it out. Or you can actually start from the end of the branch and work your way back into the trunk or the larger branch. So essentially you'd be working from the lightest part and then putting more pressure on the brush as you go back into the tree. Just remember, no trees are super smooth, so just having a little bit more of a roughness to it is a little bit more natural. I do tend to add a lot of branches. I can't stop myself sometimes. I really love to paint trees. And actually, when I was painting this example, I painted another version and I went a little crazy with the tree. Like it just took away from the rest of the painting. And since this painting is called Candy Clouds, I didn't want this branch to be too overwhelming. So yes, there are some smaller branches going off of the large branch, but it's not going as crazy as I would typically paint my branches or my trees. So just a little here and there, because again, the focal point is our candy clouds and then the two birds sitting in front. So the final step is going into our birds, and I would recommend switching to the size 2 or the size 4 flat brush, the nylon brush, the soft hair brush, and try your best to paint inside your chalk line. Take your time. This is a moment of where you really take a deep breath, inhale and exhale. It is a little bit harder to cover up black. It's not impossible. I've been there before. But just take your time because we can gradually make it bigger if we need to. So just like in the sketch, my sketch is kind of like a triangle, but I am rounding those edges at the top just to really kind of round out the shoulders. So you can do this as we are painting. I will mention, because we are going on our second layer of paint, and you may find that the paint isn't dragging as nicely across the canvas, what you can do is mix a little bit of water with your paint, just a little bit, and it will help loosen it up and make it a little bit more fluid. However, if you add too much water, it will drip down and you'll have an abstract bird. So just a little bit. I recommend mixing it with your paint on your palette and then going in with water. Don't go straight water. So with the beak, I just used the edge of the brush, very, very light pressure, and just almost stamped it to create that tiny beak. Moving on to the next bird, just again painting inside of my chalk line. I started with the body first, it is the largest part, and then using either the wide part of the brush or the edge of the brush just to fill in my sketch. And then painting the circle for the head. I did end up moving it up a little bit just because I ended up making the shoulders a little bit larger. And then of course just the beak. So just using the edge of the brush to stamp my beak. I wanted to show you an optional thing that you can add is little hearts. So I didn't add it in the original piece, but it's really cute if you wanted to add a little special love touch. So what you can do is use the small size 2 and just stamp and slightly drag the brush with the shape. So really I'm just essentially using the shape of the brush to lightly drag it downwards into a V-like shape. And it creates like a little tiny heart. We had a painting back in the day at Paint Lounge and it was called Lovebirds and it had little hearts above the birds. So it is an add-on. You can do it if you'd like to. That was our final step of our Candy Clouds painting with Paint Lounge. At this point, I just want to say thank you for supporting us at Paint Lounge. We appreciate the love and we hope you had a wonderful time with us. A couple of notes, just make sure that you wash your brushes in warm water when you are done. Don't leave them in your cup. I tend to do that a lot of the times and it can really damage your brushes over time. So I tried to clean mine to show you, but basically you just want to keep your brushes in the original form that you had them. So try your best to leave them in that same shape that you had them before and just wash them with warm water. You don't need any soap, you can just use warm water and then lay them out to dry on paper towel. You may have some paint left in your containers, just make sure they're resealed and you can use them at a later date when you're inspired again. And lastly, we would absolutely love to see what you have created. If you want to tag us on social media, just at Paint Lounge or email us at info@paintlounge.ca. As the artist, I would love to see what you create, but no pressure. We hope you had a wonderful time. Take care.